It happened last summer, driving cross-country to visit my sister in California. I had planned the trip carefully, mapping out every rest stop, motel, and gas station along the way. But plans don't mean much when you're hundreds of miles from anything familiar. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw the sign, Exit 42, Carson Ridge, Gas Food Lodging. I hadn't seen another car in at least an hour, and my gas light had been on for the past 20 minutes. So I took the exit. The road curved away from the highway and dipped into a forest. Tall pines on both sides, pitch black shadows swallowing the beam of my headlights. I kept expecting the road to open into a town or a truck stop, but it didn't. After 10 minutes, I passed an old gas station. No lights, but a faded open sign hung in the window. I pulled in. My tank was nearly dry. There were 2 pumps, old ones with analog dials, and a small building with windows covered in grime. A bell jingled when I opened the door. Inside, the place smelled like old wood and mildew. A short man in a flannel shirt sat behind the counter, watching a tiny TV that only showed static. He didn't look up. I asked if the pump worked. He nodded. Once, slow, cash only, I filled up and came back in. As I handed him a 20, I noticed something off. The shelves were stocked with food that looked 20 years out of date. Cans of beans with dust so thick you couldn't read the labels. A cooler humming loudly with no drinks inside. There was no register. He just took the bill and tucked it into his shirt pocket. I tried to make small talk. Asked if there was a motel nearby. There's one down the road, he said, still not looking at me. Keep going till the road ends. That was it. I thanked him and left. About 10 minutes later, I found the motel, a low, flat building with 10 doors and flickering fluorescent lights above each one. The sign said Carson Ridge Inn, and below that, weekly rates available, though I only needed one night. The front office was dark, but a bell was taped to the glass. I rang it. A woman came from around the side of the building wearing slippers and a thick robe, even though it was warm out. She didn't say a word, just handed me a key marked room 3 and pointed. The room was off. It looked clean at first, but everything felt worn down. The wallpaper peeled in spots. The bed sagged in the middle. There was a deadbolt, but the chain was broken. I decided to shower before sleeping. When I stepped into the bathroom, I noticed the mirror was missing. Just a rectangle of cleaner color paint where it had been. The shower water came out brown for a few seconds, then cleared up. I lay in bed scrolling my phone. No signal. Wi-Fi required a password, but there was no one to ask. I thought about leaving, but I was exhausted. Around 3:30 a.m., I heard a sound outside, a soft knock. Just once. I froze. Then again. Knock, slightly louder. I looked through the peephole. No one. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my breath. After a minute, I opened the door just a crack. Nothing. I stepped out, looked left and right. The lot was empty. No other cars. Just mine. That's when I noticed the other rooms. Every single one had the door slightly open, just an inch. All 9 of them. When I checked in, I assumed people were sleeping. Now it looked like no one had ever been there. Suddenly, I felt exposed. I backed into my room and locked the door again, even though the chain was useless. I put a chair under the knob. I didn't sleep. At sunrise, I grabbed my bag and left. No one in the office. No sign of the woman. I dropped the key on the counter and drove off, heart racing. I got back to the highway and drove until I found a real gas station. Told the guy behind the counter where I'd stayed. He paused. "You mean exit 42? I nodded. "That exit's been closed for years. Washed out in a flood. No access anymore." I showed him on my phone, but there was nothing, no Carson Ridge, no inn, not even the gas station. I know what I saw. I have the receipt from the fill-up. It just says $20 fuel, no address, no name. I still wonder if I'd stayed longer or opened one of those other motel doors. What would I have found? And why were they all open just a crack? Last summer, I went on a solo road trip across the country. I wanted to clear my head, see new places, and spend some time away from everything. I planned my route carefully, mostly small towns and quiet roads. One afternoon, I was driving through a dry, flat area somewhere in Arizona. The sky was wide and empty. My GPS said I had about 2 more hours until the next motel. Then I saw a sign for a gas station and diner off a side road. I had half a tank left, but I figured I'd stop, grab a drink, and stretch my legs. So I took the turn. That was my mistake. The road was narrow and cracked. No other cars. Just empty land stretching out in every direction. I kept driving, expecting to see the gas station any minute. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. No gas station. No diner. I pulled over and checked my GPS again. No signal. I thought maybe I missed a turn, so I decided to head back. But when I turned the car around, the road didn't look the same. There were no road signs, no landmarks, just more desert. I kept driving, looking for the main highway, but I couldn't find it. I wasn't panicking yet. I figured I'd reconnect to GPS eventually, but after another 30 minutes, I realized something strange. I had driven in a circle. I passed the same broken fence, the same pile of rocks, the same tire lying in the dirt. I knew it was the same, because I remembered a faded red cloth tied to the fence post. That's when my stomach dropped. I was lost. I stopped the car, turned off the engine, and sat in silence. No wind, no birds, just the creaking of the car cooling down. I got out and looked around. Nothing but dry land and heat waves. I opened the trunk, grabbed a bottle of water, and got back in the car. That's when I saw something in the rearview mirror. A man, standing, far down the road behind me. I turned around quickly, but when I looked again, he was gone. I told myself I was seeing things. The heat, the stress, it was messing with me. I turned the car on and started driving again. Slower this time. Another few miles, and I saw a building in the distance. Finally, it was a small, run-down gas station with a rusted sign and a single pump. I pulled in. There were no other cars, no people. The windows were covered in dust. The front door was cracked open. I got out and called, "Hello?" No answer. I stepped inside. The air smelled stale. The shelves were mostly empty. Old candy, dusty canned food, a broken fan spinning slowly. Behind the counter was a bell. I rang it. No one came. I was about to leave when I heard a door creak in. The back. Footsteps. Slow, heavy. Then a voice. "You're not supposed to be here." I turned around. A man stood in the doorway to the back room. He was tall, with gray hair and a blank expression. "I'm just lost," I said. "My GPS stopped working." He stared at me. Didn't blink. Then he said, "People don't come down this road anymore." I asked if there was another way to get back to the main highway. He just pointed outside and said, "Drive straight. Don't stop. Don't look back." I nodded, thanked him, and walked out fast. I got in my car and drove. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't stop. Even when I saw something move in the field beside the road, shapes, people, or maybe scarecrows, I just kept driving. Finally, after what felt like forever, I saw a new road sign, a proper one. And then bars on my phone. Signal. I reconnected to the GPS. It rerouted me, and I followed the voice instructions until I reached a motel just before sunset. I checked in, locked the door, and took the longest shower of my life. I tried to forget about the strange man and the weird road, but as I was unpacking, I noticed something that made my heart stop. Tied to the handle of my suitcase was a faded piece of red cloth. Just like the one on the fence I passed earlier. I didn't put it there. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. I finished my trip, stuck to major roads, and didn't take any more detours. But sometimes late at night, I still wonder, what if I had stopped? What if I had looked back, and who or what followed me out? A few years ago, I found a small basement apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It was cheap, furnished, and close to where I worked. The landlord was a guy in his 50s named Mr. Lang. He lived upstairs and barely talked, which was fine by me. Place was small, just one room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a single window that looked out at the ground level. You could see people's shoes as they walked by. Everything seemed normal the first couple weeks. But then I started hearing sounds at night. Not loud ones. Just small things like someone shifting their weight or dragging their feet slowly across the floor. At first, I thought it was Mr. Lang moving around upstairs. But when I paid attention, the sounds were coming from inside my apartment, under the floorboards. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a loud creak beneath my bed. It sounded like wood bending under weight. I froze, heart racing. I waited, but didn't hear anything else. I finally convinced myself it was just the old building settling. The next day, I mentioned it casually to Mr. Lang when I saw him getting his mail. He didn't look up from his envelope. "Old houses make noise," he said. "You'll get used to it." I didn't press it. That night, I stayed up. I turned off the lights, got in bed, and waited. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it again. A soft dragging sound like cloth rubbing against wood. It came from under the floor. I leaned over the side of my bed and pressed my ear to the floorboards. There it was. Movement. Slow. Careful. Like someone crawling. I jumped back and turned on the lights. The sound stopped. I pulled the rug aside and checked the floor, but there was no door, no crawl space, just old wooden planks. The next morning, I checked outside. The building was old, and the foundation was low to the ground. No basement beneath me. I was already in the basement. That night, I pushed my dresser over the spot where I thought the sound had come from. I felt ridiculous, but it gave me peace of mind until I woke up the next morning and the dresser had been moved back. Just a few inches, but enough to notice. I didn't move it. I stood there, staring at it, trying to explain it. Maybe it slid on the floor? Maybe I bumped it? That night, I moved it again and placed an old book on top. I even took a picture on my phone to be sure. At 2:12 a.m., I woke up. The book had fallen. I sat up fast and turned on the light. The dresser was moved again. The picture on my phone confirmed it. I didn't sleep after that. I decided to talk to Mr. Lang again. This time, I was direct. Is there anything under my floor? I asked. Like an old crawl space or storage? He stared at me. His eyes looked tired. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "You're not the first tenant to ask?" That? I waited. He continued, voice low. People hear things. They leave, sometimes after a week, sometimes a month. You've lasted longer than most. I asked him what he meant. What was under there? He looked past me at the ground. It's best not to look, he said. Then he turned and walked back inside. I decided that night I was done. I started packing my things. But around 1:45 a.m., I heard a noise. Not under the floor this time, but inside my closet. It was slow. Careful. I walked over, heart pounding. I stood in front of the door, hand on the knob. I counted to 3 and yanked it open. Nothing. Just coats, shoes, a few boxes. I closed it and turned around and froze. There were muddy footprints on the floor. They weren't there before. They started at the closet, walked into the middle of the room, then stopped. No return prints. No sign of anyone leaving. I left that night, packed what I could, and drove to a motel. I called Mr. Lang the next morning and told him I was breaking the lease. He didn't argue, just said, "I understand." I drove by the building a few months later. My old window was boarded up. A for rent sign was stuck in the lawn. It's still listed online sometimes. Cozy basement studio, affordable rate. But I know what's down there, and I know it waits until after midnight. I never found out what was under the floor, and I never went back. But sometimes, even now, when I wake up at night, I swear I hear it again. Just under my bed. Dragging. Waiting. 3 years ago, I lived in a small house just outside of town. I was renting it while saving up for something better. It was an old place with creaky floors and thin walls, but it had a big yard and lots of trees. It felt private, quiet almost. Too quiet. The house had one strange thing, a tall, narrow window in the hallway. It faced the backyard and had no curtain. It was right at eye level, and if you passed by at night, you could see your own reflection. During the day, it just showed trees and sky. One night, around 11 p.m., I was walking past that window to go to bed when I thought I saw something move outside. Just a flash of shape, maybe. I paused and looked out, but it was too dark to see anything clearly. I figured it was just a shadow or an animal. I went to bed. The next night I saw it again, a shape taller than before, standing still at the tree line about 20 feet from the house. I stared, but it didn't move. After a while I turned away and told myself it was nothing. The third night, it was closer, still in the same spot. Still not moving. It looked like a person. I got my flashlight and shined it out the window. The beam cut through the dark, lighting up the trees, but no one was there. Nothing but leaves and dirt. I checked the backyard. No footprints, no sign of anything. I started keeping the lights on in the hallway after that. I even taped up a towel over the window. A couple of nights later, I woke up at 3 a.m. to a sound. It was soft like a tap. Then another, then 3 in a row. I got up and walked into the hallway. The towel I taped to the window had been pulled down. It lay crumpled on the floor. And behind the glass, just inches away, was a man. I couldn't see his face clearly, just a shadow. Tall, thin, standing completely still. He didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there, staring in. I ran back to my room and locked the door. I called the police, heart pounding. They came 20 minutes later. They checked the yard, the woods, even the roof. No sign of anyone, no footprints. They told me it was probably a trespasser, maybe a neighbor, playing a prank, but I don't have neighbors close by. And no one admitted to anything. I bought a heavy curtain and nailed it over the window. Weeks passed. Things calmed down. I stopped thinking about it, then one night, I came home late from work. I unlocked the front door and froze. The curtain was gone, not torn, not fallen, gone. And something was written on the glass from the inside. A smear, like a finger had dragged through the dust. It said, "Why don't you look?" I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's house that night. I didn't go back for a few days. When I did, I brought someone with me, my cousin, Mark. He didn't believe me, thought I was just tired or stressed out. We checked the house top to bottom. Everything looked fine. No signs of a break-in. Nothing. Stolen. I almost felt silly. That night, Mark stayed over. We both slept in the living room, just in case. At 2:45 a.m. We both woke up at the same time. We heard it. Tap, tap, tap. We crept into the hallway. The window was bare again. No curtain, no note. Just the reflection of the hallway behind us. And something else. A figure. Standing outside. Mark whispered, "What the hell is that?" I told him not to move. We stood there for maybe a full minute, not breathing. Then, figure turned. And walked away, slowly, into the trees. We stayed up until sunrise. Mark believed me after that. He left the next day and begged me to move out. I wanted to. I really did. But the lease wasn't up, and I didn't have the money to break it. So I stayed. But I never walked past that window again after dark. I stopped going into the hallway at night completely. I kept my doors locked, my lights on, and my phone charged. And for a while, nothing happened. Until the last night I spent there. I woke up to the sound of the back door creaking open. I knew. I had locked it. I grabbed my phone and sat up, frozen. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, slow, careful. They stopped at the window. I waited, heart racing. Then the tapping started again. Not from outside. From inside. I never looked. I couldn't. I ran out the front door barefoot, phone in hand, and never went back. I ended the lease by mail and left the rest of my things behind. I don't know who or what was at that window, but I think it was never outside. I think it was always inside. Waiting for me to look. 2 years ago, I worked the night shift at a small gas station off the highway. It wasn't a busy place. Most nights, I saw maybe 5 customers between midnight and 6 a.m. It was mostly truckers or tired travelers. My job was simple stock. Shelves, clean up, watch the security monitors, and ring people up when they came in. At first, I liked the quiet. I brought books, played music, and drank way too much coffee to stay awake. But after a while, I started noticing strange things. It started with the cameras. We had 4 monitors behind the counter, showing live feeds from outside and inside the store. 1 camera pointed at the front door, 1 at the pumps, and 2 inside. Some nights, I'd glance at the screen and see a person standing at pump 3, but when I looked outside, no one was there. I thought it was just a glitch. Old camera. Bad signal. But it kept happening. Always pump 3. One night, the figure stayed longer. I watched on the screen as they just stood there, not moving. Their face was blurry, like the camera couldn't focus on them. I looked outside again. Nothing. I checked. The camera feed again. The person was gone. I told my boss, but he just shrugged. "Those cameras are older than you," he said. "Just ignore it." So I tried to dot, then came the phone calls. Around 2 or 3 a.m., the store phone would ring. I'd answer, but no one would speak. Just silence. Then a click. One night, after the 4th call like that, I stayed silent after answering. No greeting, no hello. And I heard breathing, not heavy. Just soft, like someone standing very close to the phone dot, then a whisper. "Come outside." Click. I stood there, holding the phone, heart beating hard in my chest. I didn't go outside. I checked the cameras. No one was there. I didn't mention it to anyone. I needed the job, and I didn't want to sound crazy. A week later, I was restocking. Drinks in the back cooler when I heard the bell above the door ring. I walked back to the front counter, but no one was there. I checked the security tape. The door had opened on its own. That was impossible. It had a heavy hydraulic hinge. It never just opened. I rewound the footage. This time, I saw something. For one frame less than a second, a figure stood just inside the door. Long coat, face hidden in shadow. Then gone. I paused it, rewound again, and tried to freeze the image, but the screen glitched. It went fuzzy, then black. When the image came back, the figure was gone. I took a picture of the screen with my phone, but when I looked at it later, there was nothing in the photo, just an empty store. The next night, things got worse. At around 3 a.m., I was behind the counter when all the lights flickered. Then they shut off completely. It was pitch black. I grabbed my flashlight and tried the switches. Nothing. The cooler started humming louder, almost like it was shaking. Then the front door slammed open. Wind rushed in, but there was no wind outside. I stood there frozen, pointing the flashlight toward the entrance. Something walked in, not quickly. Just slow, steady steps. But the beam of my flashlight didn't reach it. The figure stayed just at the edge of the light. I backed away. Then the voice. It came from the darkness, calm and close. "You've seen me," it said. I ran to the back, locked myself in the office, and called the police. By the time they arrived, the store was normal again. Lights working, doors closed. No sign of anything. The footage from the cameras had been erased. Just static between 2:56 and 3:12. My boss said it was a power outage and shrugged it off. I quit that day. I couldn't explain any of it, and I still don't understand what I saw. But sometimes late at night, I dream about that gas station. And in every dream, I'm watching the monitors again, and pump 3 is never empty. Last summer, I went on a road trip across the state by myself. I had no real plan, just a few small towns I wanted to visit and some back roads to explore. One night I was too tired to drive anymore, so I pulled into a small roadside motel just outside a quiet town. It was old and faded, with a neon sign that buzzed loudly and a cracked parking lot. The lady at the front desk looked half asleep when I walked in. I asked for a room, and she handed me a key without asking many questions. "Room 209, she said. "Up the stairs, to the right." I asked if there was anyone else staying there. She shook her head. Nope, just you tonight. It felt strange. The place had at least 20 rooms, but it was only one night. I didn't think too much about it. Room 209 was at the end of the hallway. The door stuck a little when I pushed it open. Inside, everything looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Faded curtains, a small TV, 2 twin beds with stiff blankets dotted. Smelled like dust and air freshener. I set my bag down and took a quick shower. I planned to sleep for a few hours and get back on the road before sunrise. But around 1 a.m., I woke up to a soft sound. Knocking. 3 slow knocks. Not at my door, but on the wall next to the bed. At first, I thought it was from the room next to me. Maybe someone was checking in after all. Then it happened again. 3 knocks. Even slower this time. I pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. I waited a few minutes, then turned on the TV to drown out the silence. Static. Every channel. I gave up and turned it off. Then I heard it again. Not knocking this time, shuffling. Like feet dragging across the carpet, but not in the hallway. Inside the room, I sat up fast and turned on the lamp. There was no one there. I checked the closet, the bathroom. Under the bed. Nothing. I was too scared to go back to sleep, so I sat on the bed with the lamp on and scrolled through my phone to stay distracted. Around 2:30 a.m., I noticed something. The room next door, room 210, had its light on. I could see it from the crack in the curtains. A soft glow from the window. I walked out into the hallway and listened. Silence. I knocked on the door of 210. No answer. I turned the knob. Locked. As I stood there, I heard something from inside. Not movement. Breathing. Slow and deep, like someone sleeping just on the other side of the door. I went back to my room and tried to shake the feeling off. Maybe someone had checked in without me hearing it. Maybe the desk lady gave them a key while I was asleep. I laid back down, still wide awake. At 3:04 a.m., the phone in my room rang. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked it up. No one spoke, just breathing. Who is this? I said. Still breathing. Then click, I put the phone down and grabbed my stuff. I was ready to leave, even if it was still dark out. But as I opened the door, something caught my eye. Room 210's door was wide open. The light inside was off now. I walked over slowly, holding my breath. The room was empty. Beds untouched. No luggage. No sign that anyone had ever been there. Stepped back and looked at the room number above the door. It didn't say 210. It said 208. I turned around and looked at my door. 209. There was no room 210. There had never been one. I went down to the front desk, but the lady wasn't there. The chair was empty. The office light was off. I rang the bell on the counter. No answer. I left the key on the desk and walked out. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The neon sign flickered and buzzed behind me. And for just a second, I swear I saw someone standing in the upstairs window of room 209, watching me. Didn't stop driving until the sun came up. I don't know what that place was. I checked online later. There's no record of that motel anymore. Not on maps, not on any website. It's like it disappeared. But I still remember the smell of that room, the knocking. And that slow, steady breathing. A few years ago, I lived in a small town in the Midwest. My house sat near the edge of town, with a big cornfield stretching out behind my backyard. I never thought much about it. The corn grew tall in the summer and was cut down in the fall. That was just how it was. One evening in late August, I was sitting on my back porch, drinking iced tea and watching the sky turn orange. It was peaceful, quiet, just the sound of bugs and the wind blowing through the corn. That's when I saw something. Someone was standing in the field. At first, I thought it was a scarecrow, but it was in a strange spot not near the edge where the farmer usually put them, but deep in the middle rows. And it was too tall, too stiff. I stared for a while. The figure didn't move. I tried to convince myself it really was just a scarecrow I hadn't noticed before. But something about it made me uneasy. The next morning, I looked out again. The figure was still there. Same spot. Same position. Only now, it looked closer to the edge. I grabbed my binoculars from the kitchen drawer and focused in. It wasn't a scarecrow. It was a man. He was standing completely still, facing my house. I called the non-emergency police line and explained what I saw. The woman on the phone said she'd send a deputy to check it out. When the officer came by, an hour later, I showed him the field. The man was gone. We walked out together, pushing through the tall stalks. No footprints, no broken corn, nothing. Probably just a drifter passing through, the deputy said. Fields like this attract all kinds. Just lock your doors at night. That didn't help me feel better. That night, I left my porch light on. I kept checking the windows every hour or so, nothing. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke up. I didn't know why at first. There was no sound, no light, just a strange, cold feeling in my chest. I got up and looked out the kitchen window. He was back, standing in the field, closer than before. This time, I could see him more clearly. He was wearing dark clothes, maybe a coat. His arms were hanging, stiff by his sides. He wasn't moving, just staring. I closed all the curtains, locked every door again, and sat in the living room with a knife in my lap. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I checked the field. He was gone, but there were footprints this time leading from deep in the corn, all the way to the edge of my backyard. I called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously. 2 officers came and walked the field. They told me they'd patrol the area more at night and that I should consider getting a camera. I bought one that afternoon, a motion-activated trail camera, the kind hunters use. I mounted it to a tree facing the field. That night, I sat by the window with the lights off. At exactly 3 a.m., the camera's light blinked. It had detected movement. Waited until sunrise to check the footage. The video was grainy and dark, but clear enough. At 2:58 a.m., the corn started swaying. At 3 o'clock, the man stepped into the open. He walked to the edge of the field, then stopped and turned to look straight at the camera. He didn't blink. He didn't move again. Just stared. At 3:06. He stepped backward and disappeared into the corn. I sent the footage to the police. They told me they couldn't identify him. He didn't match any missing persons or suspects in the area. No known reason for him to be there. They promised to keep checking. That was the last time I saw him on camera. But I still saw signs, bent stalks near the house, footprints in the dirt. Sometimes I'd wake up to find small objects moved, my porch chair tilted, my garden hose uncoiled. I stopped going out at night. I stopped sitting on the porch. I even moved my bedroom to the front of the house so I wouldn't have to look at the field. Eventually, the corn was harvested. The land behind my house was bare again. I tried to relax. tried to forget. But then, one morning in November, I walked out back and saw something in the dirt. A footprint fresh, deep, pointing toward my house. I moved away 2 weeks later. I never figured out who he was, but I still wonder sometimes, was he living in the field, watching me every night? And if the corn hadn't been cut down, would he have come even closer? Last year I moved into a small apartment on the second floor of an old building. It was cheap, quiet, and close to work. The landlord was an older man named Mr. Holla. He lived in the building too, on the first floor. When I signed the lease, he mentioned that the third floor only had one apartment, and it was rented by a man named Leonard. He keeps to himself, Mr. Hawley said. Doesn't like to be bothered. That was fine by me. I liked my privacy too. For the first few weeks, I didn't see or hear anything from upstairs. It was like no one lived there at all. Sometimes I even wondered if Mr. Hawley had just made Leonard up. Then, one night, I heard footsteps above me. Slow, steady, back and forth across the ceiling. It was around 2 a.m. I was in bed, trying to fall asleep. The pacing went on for over an hour. I thought maybe Leonard worked night shifts or had trouble sleeping. The next morning, I mentioned it to Mr. Hawley in passing. He gave me a strange look. Leonard usually doesn't move around much. He's very quiet. I shrugged it off, but the pacing didn't stop. Every night, between 1 and 3 a.m., I'd hear the same slow footsteps. Always the same rhythm. Back and forth. It started to bother me. One night, I went upstairs to knock on his door. I stood in front of apartment 3A. The hallway was cold and dim. The door was plain with a single peephole. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Louder, still nothing. But the footsteps started. While I was standing right there, I pressed my ear to the door. I could hear them, right behind it. Walking slowly. Then they stopped. I waited a full minute. No sound. No movement. I left, feeling uneasy. A few nights later, the pacing changed. It got faster, louder, like someone was stomping. I banged on my ceiling with a broom. Noise stopped. I finally had enough and called Mr. Hawley. He came upstairs and knocked on Leonard's door himself. When there was no answer, he unlocked it with a master key. I stood behind him as he opened the door. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no lights, just bare wooden floors and dust. Mr. Hawley stepped inside, confused. He hasn't said anything about moving out. We looked around. There was no sign that anyone had been living there at all. I asked when he last saw Leonard. He paused, thinking. A few months ago, maybe? He paid in cash and never talked much. We closed the door and locked it. That night, the footsteps started again, louder than ever. I didn't sleep. I recorded the sound with my phone. In the morning, I played it for Mr. Hawley. He frowned and said, "There's no one up there. Maybe it's the pipes or the building settling." But I knew what I heard. These were footsteps. Human footsteps. I considered moving out, but I couldn't afford to break the lease. Then one night, things got worse. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of something dragging across the ceiling. A long scraping sound. Then footsteps, faster than before, rushing back and forth. Then banging, like someone throwing themselves against the floor. I sat up in bed, frozen. And then I heard something else. Whispering. Not above me, but in the hallway. I got up slowly and opened my door. The hallway was empty, but the sound of whispering was coming from the stairs leading up. I stepped carefully, one at a time, toward the third floor. The whispering stopped. I reached the landing and stared at Leonard's door. It was open, just a crack. I should have turned around, but I didn't. I pushed it open. The apartment was dark, but in the faint moonlight, coming through the window, I saw something. Footprints on the dusty floor. Bare feet. They led from the doorway to the middle of the room. Then they stopped. Nothing else. Just a dead end. No furniture. No Leonard. I backed out, heart pounding, and closed the door. I told Mr. Hawley the next day. He went up again, this time with a flashlight. The footprints were gone. He changed the lock for the next 2 nights. It was quiet. I thought maybe whatever was happening had ended. But on the 3rd night, I woke up to a new sound. Not footsteps. Breathing. Coming from my ceiling. Deep, steady, right above my bed. I turned on the light and looked up. There was a faint stain on the ceiling I hadn't noticed before. A dark, round spot. The breathing continued. Packed a bag and stayed at a friend's house that night. I moved out 2 weeks later. Mr. Hawley didn't try to stop me. In fact, he looked relieved. As I was carrying the last box out, he said, "You're not the first to leave because of that apartment." I asked what he meant. He shook his head. Leonard was the first tenant. He died up there years ago. Heart attack alone. I cleaned the place out myself. I just stared at him, but he said he still lived there. He gave me a tired smile. I didn't want to scare you. When I was in college, I rented a cheap room in an old house near campus. The place was run down but affordable, and I shared it with 2 other students, Maya and Jordan. There were 4 bedrooms, but only 3 of us lived there. The 4th room stayed locked. We asked the landlord about it when we moved in. He just said, "Don't worry about that room. It's used for storage. Please don't try to open it." It was at the end of the upstairs hallway. The door was thick and painted, white like the others, but it had an old metal lock on it. Not a normal doorknob lock, a padlock, like something you'd use on a storage shed. We didn't think much of it at first. The house was strange, and the landlord seemed like a quiet, private guy. We just figured he stored old furniture or something in there. But after a few weeks, strange things started happening. I started hearing sounds at night. Soft noises, like shuffling or the creak of someone walking on the floor. At first, I thought it was Jordan or Maya, but one night I checked, and both of them were asleep. The noises were coming from inside the locked room. I stood in the hallway, right outside the door, listening. I heard movement. Then a small thump, like something falling. It made my skin crawl. I asked Maya about it in the morning. She looked nervous. "Yeah, I've heard it too, but I didn't want to say anything." We told Jordan. He laughed and said it was probably just rats or a pipe making noise. I wanted to believe him. But the sounds got louder over the next few nights. One night, I was in bed around 2 a.m. when I heard something that made me sit straight up. Knocked out from the other side of the locked door. I wasn't imagining it. I heard it clearly. Just one knock, slow, heavy. Then silence. The next morning, I called the landlord. He sounded annoyed when I brought it up. "There's nothing in that room but old junk," he said. "Please stop trying to snoop around. That room stays locked for a reason." He hung up before I could ask more. That's when Maya said something that really scared me. I saw the door open once. I stared at her. What do you mean? It was late and I was walking to the bathroom. I thought I was dreaming, but the padlock was hanging off. The door was open just a crack. I didn't go inside. I asked her when this happened. 2 nights ago. That was the same night I'd heard the knock out. I decided to check the door every night before bed. I'd walk down the hall, make sure the padlock was still there, and listen. Nothing happened for a few days. Then one night, I walked to the end of the hall. The padlock was gone. The door was slightly open. I froze. The hallway was dead silent. I felt like something was waiting on the other side. I took 1 step forward and the door slammed, shut in my face. I ran back to my room and locked the door behind me. I didn't sleep. The next day, the padlock was back. I didn't tell the others. Started keeping a kitchen chair under my doorknob at night. Just in case. About a week later, Jordan came to breakfast looking pale. I swear someone was in my room last night, he said. I left my window closed, and when I woke up, it was open. My stuff was moved. We checked for signs of a break-in. Nothing. That night, we all stayed up together in the living room, scared to be alone. We kept hearing little sounds from upstairs. Shifts, scratches, a faint creaking door. Around 3 a.m., we decided to check the hallway. The padlock was hanging loose. We all stood there, staring at it. Jordan reached out and slowly pushed the door open. The room was empty. Dusty floor, cracked walls. No furniture, but there were footprints in the dust, bare feet. They led in a circle around the room, then stopped at the center. Maya pointed at the ceiling. There was a small hatch, a crawl space door. We voted not to open it. We closed the door, put the lock back on, and never spoke about it again. After that night, none of us slept well. The sounds came back. The knocks, the footsteps. Sometimes I'd wake up and find my bedroom door open, even though I knew I'd locked it. One time, I found something on my pillow, a small piece of paper. There were no words, just a crude drawing of an eye. I moved out at the end of the semester. So did Jordan and Maya. I don't know what's in that room or who had access to it, but I still dream about it sometimes. And every time I do, I wake up to the sound of knocking. Last year, I moved into a small apartment complex after getting my first full-time job. It wasn't fancy, just a 2-story building with 8 units, 4 on top, 4 on the bottom. I got a downstairs one. Rent was cheap, neighbors kept to themselves, and I liked the quiet. At the end of the hall was a locked door. It looked just like the other apartment doors, but it had no number on it. Just a dented brass handle and a small black peephole. I thought maybe it was a supply closet or laundry room, but when I asked the property manager, he just said, "Don't worry about it." I didn't think much of it for a while. I was busy with work and trying to get used to living on my own. One night, around 2 a.m., I got up to get a drink of water. On my way back to bed, I heard something in the hallway, faint tapping, like someone lightly knocking on a door. I looked through the peephole of my front door. The hallway was empty. I waited, heard nothing more, and went back to bed. The next night it happened again. Same time, same tapping sound. But when I looked, nothing was there. Just the silent, dim hallway. By the third night, it changed. I didn't hear tapping, I heard breathing. Not loud, but steady, just outside my door. I stood still, barely breathing myself. After a minute, it stopped. I opened the door quickly. No one, but I noticed something new. The door at the end, the locked one, was open just a little, maybe a few inches, enough that I could see total darkness inside. No light at all. I walked toward it slowly, unsure if I should call someone. Before I got too close, the door slammed shut. Hard, I jumped. I backed into my apartment and locked the door. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I knocked on my neighbor's door. Her name was Diane. She was in her 60s and always friendly. "Do you know anything about that door at the end?" I asked. Her smile faded. She looked over my shoulder toward it. "Just ignore it," she said. "That's what we all do." I asked if it was empty. She didn't answer. Just closed. Her door slowly. I started checking the door every evening. It stayed shut for the next few days, but then things got stranger. One night, I heard the sound of a TV playing behind that door frame, like it was playing an old black and white movie. I pressed my ear against the door. Sure enough, I heard voices, but there was no power cord, no cable box, no lights on in there. The hallway had one single bulb flickering overhead, and that was it. I knocked. Silence. I waited. The knob turned slowly from the inside. I ran. Back in my apartment. I locked the door and pushed my couch in front of it. I felt stupid. Maybe someone lived there. Maybe it was just a weird neighbor, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that week, I came home to find something tucked under my doormat. A photo. It was a picture of me taken from behind as I stood in the hallway the night I knocked on the door. I was wearing the same shirt I had on that night. There was no note, number writing on the back. I knocked on Diane's door again. No answer. Same with the guy upstairs. It felt like everyone had vanished. I went to the manager's office the next day, but it was locked. I called the number on the rental agreement. Disconnected. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the hallway outside my apartment with a flashlight facing the locked door. I wanted to see who or what was inside. Around 3 a.m., the door opened. Not slowly this time. Just fully, like someone yanked it. No one was there. I stood up, flashlight shaking in my hand. I should have gone back inside. I didn't. I walked toward it and looked inside. It was a room, but not like any apartment I'd ever seen. The walls were covered in peeling floral wallpaper. A single chair sat in the middle of the room, facing the corner. The air smelled like wet carpet and bleach. There were no windows. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. Pitch black. I screamed and pounded on the door. My flashlight flickered, then died. And then silence. I don't know how long. I stood there, maybe hours. Eventually, the door creaked open on its own. I ran out, straight to my car, barefoot. I didn't even go back for my things. I just drove. The building was torn down 6 months later. I saw it on the local news. Old. Apartment complex demolished. Building had been empty for years. Empty. But I lived there, didn't I?